as a guy that was as bearish and anti-Tesla as anybody out there, because I was a big anti-Tesla. I thought for sure Musk was a fraudster, out and out fraud. I don't think that's the case now, but I do think that he is. I think he presses the edges big time on what he should can't, what he can and can't say.
I mean, he says stuff he knows not true.
The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. It is only intended to provide education about the financial industry. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. Any past performance discussed during this program is no guarantee of future results. Any indices referenced for comparison are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. Any references to performance of securities are thought to be materially accurate and actual performance may differ. As always, please remember investing involves risk and possible loss of principal capital. Please seek advice from a licensed professional.
And we are back to another edition of the NFL Draft today. No, I'm just kidding. The Daily Dots. But as you guys know, we were talking a little bit of draft yesterday. The draft, for those of you that don't know, it's not a one-day event. It's a 3-day event. So we do have to do some draft commentary. We got to, right? It's for those of you that don't know, I played for a very small school. I was a Division III player. And I've coached high school, and now I coach a team. Chase played in high school. He's a football fanatic. So we both come to this. We come by it honestly. So you can't be upset. Plus, like we said, there's a lot of parallels.
Yeah, I'm a giant nerd, so the draft's my favorite thing in the world. If you were like, for the rest of your life, you get to watch Super Bowls or drafts. For me, it's draft, not even close.
And you would, and let's be honest, okay? And we've never had this conversation, but if you had your druthers. Like, I feel like you would have a draft rig set up, just like your ideal trading rig setup.
So like as a kid, like I basically would turn my bedroom into like a war room.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm like talking about with like the players ranked on like all of it.
Yeah, you know what? I should order you those. I should order you like Bulwark shaped little magnets that you can write names on, little dry erase space in there, and we'll make you a war. That'll be like a bonus one year.
One of my key memories was. This guy I wanted so bad for the Browns to draft. His name was Travis Prentice. He was a running back from Miami of Ohio.
Yep, I remember.
It was one of the worst picks we've ever had.
Really?
But it was one of those where like you want your team to do something, they do it, and it's like exhilarating.
And you're like, yes.
Yeah, and then like 3 years later, he's like back in groceries, but whatever.
Yeah, I don't know why I remember that name. Probably because I was a draft geek too. I'm trying to remember. I've got more draft like horror stories where I've seen somebody we picked. I'll tell you one, and it still hurts to this day. It was 18, I think it's 2018, 2017. Our pick comes up. Seahawks are picking like 26, I think. 26, 28, somewhere like that. And they draft this kid, LJ Collier. Okay. And I'm like, okay, we need a defensive tackle. Great. He's out of I can't remember what school, but it was a smaller school. And I was like, okay, awesome. We found a gem. I put on I've got 2 of these. I put on his film and was like, what? Like it just, when you see an NFL, especially on defense and defensive line, when you see an NFL capable guy, now you don't know if he's going to ball out, but there's traits, there's things you see, and you put this game on. Like for instance, you either see unbelievable, like elite quickness, range, stuff like that, or a higher correlation to success, at least in my experience, is hand fighting capability. Yep. Because people will never understand how much harder that is than it looks. Yep. It is not easy. Or you see a combination of the two, and that's usually really special players, right? This guy had nothing. And I was shocked. The other one that got me, and this one still hurts to this day. Do you remember, I want to say it was the 08 draft. Do you remember Seahawks had like the 2nd or 3rd pick in the draft, and they drafted that linebacker out of Wake Forest, Aaron Curry.
Yep.
Can't miss.
Great athlete.
Right? I'm pumped. I haven't seen any film on him. Put on the film. I remember exactly where I was. It was at my buddy's house. We were watching it, and I played linebacker. I put on the film, and I went, oh, no. And my buddy's like, what? He didn't play football, but he was like, he was like between you and I. He loved it. He never played, though, but he loved it. Hardcore draft nerd. And he's like, what? And I go, when you see a guy that is that big of a physical freak, and he was like 6'3", 250, ran like a 4.39,
Yep.
40, just a nut job, right? And he plays linebacker, and I'm combing through all of his game film, and I can't find a single lights out, like blindside shot. That concerns me. And everybody's like, why? He's got to get, I'm like, no, when you see those are typically a product of you diagnosing the play and beating the offense there, right? When you don't see that with a guy with that level of athleticism playing linebacker, that's a problem.
The instincts are off. And if you run a 4.3, 4.4 with bad instincts, you may as well run a 4.6, 4.7.
100%.
And some of those slower guys, if that first instinct and first step is quick, who cares what your 40 time is?
Yeah, that's
like
why
Zach Thomas wasn't fast. He's in the Hall of Fame.
That's why I've always said I think it's ridiculous to measure linebackers unless you're running a 3-4 and you're expecting your linebackers to legitimately cover.
Yeah, let's say if you got it, or you run that Tampa 2 where that middle linebacker's got to get 20 yards of depth or something. Sure.
Yeah, that factors in. But I will still say that I've always thought that your 10 to 20 yard sprints are the most important as a linebacker.
Those breakouts of first 10. Yep.
And your ability to diagnose. I mean, because that cuts out so many steps.
Right.
I think it's one of the other one that is really overrated at linebacker. Now we were talking about length. I don't think length is arm length is not overrated anywhere. Like football is one of those games. The longer your arms are at any position, it's going to be helpful. But height, especially at linebackers, is just so overrated.
Going back to Zach Thomas, he proved that.
Well, defensive line too. You've seen it. Like Aaron Donald was 6'1".
Elvis Dumervil got underdrafted because he was smaller. And
John Randall.
Yep.
Wasn't John Randall like 5'11"?
He was very small. And he was elite. So yeah,
he was a baller.
Some guys just know how to move their weight around in their hands and like
leverage.
Who cares?
Yeah, like Aaron Donald. God, that was talk about film that was fun to watch.
Right.
So you guys have got 4 picks coming up.
4 picks tonight, two in the first 4 picks of the second round, and then a couple in the third. So,
how do you feel? So you weren't nuts about it in real time. What do you think about it? Because it was either Travis Hunter, but you guys did get a pretty impressive haul.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I understand it, but I really wanted Travis Hunter because I going back to that. Hey, top 5, better top 10, better be an All-Pro. Like I think he's an All-Pro.
Yeah.
But at the same time, by far the most important position in football is quarterback. We don't have one. We need one. This draft's terrible for quarterbacks. So it does make sense to get 2 ones next year, including Jacksonville's ones. That could be a top 15 pick. Both could be top 15 picks. So at that point, you can do whatever you want and get whichever quarterback you like. From that standpoint, I can't really argue. And Mason Graham from Michigan, like he fits what we do big time on defense. So we like the Ferrari defensive tackles that are willing to get upfield and wreak havoc. And he played a lot of like 2-gap, real disciplined stuff where he wasn't allowed to do that at Michigan. Anytime they set him free, he was in the backfield. So
really?
We'll set him free a lot. Stick him right next to Miles. It becomes a problem for people.
Yeah, that's
so I get it. I'll take it. And I wanted Ashton Genty instead of him, but that's the fan thing, wanting the running back instead of the defensive tackle, right?
In most cases, I would agree with that.
But a running back will play 7-8 years, and a defensive tackle could play 12-13. So there's value there.
No, that's true. I just think that 9 times out of 10, I would agree with that statement. I think Ashton Genty is one of those guys, kind of like Travis Hunter, where I think that he could be. You and I were talking about.
He could be a Hall of Famer. Like,
man,
he's that talented.
Yeah. Physically speaking, I think he has potential to be one of the best ever. And the reason I say that is go put on his game film. But the thing that you and I were talking about this the other day, the thing that I thought was most impressive was the playoff game they lost, Boise State.
Yep.
I cannot tell you how many big-time bowl games or even college football playoff games where you get one of these superstars, right? And naturally, you've got 2 elite teams going in. It's almost never that the big-name guy, especially the running back, has a big game.
Yeah, because you can sell out to stop that position if you want.
Well, and then you look at who they're playing. They got athletes all over the field. They can sell out to stop that position in a game. And playing against a team like, like for instance, wasn't it Ohio State that beat Boise State? Was that who beat them?
I don't even remember. Yeah, I don't remember.
Okay, but go with my point.
I don't think so, but
well, whatever. So let's say it was a team like that.
Yeah.
Was it Oklahoma? Was it Oklahoma?
No, because Oklahoma sucked this year.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Anyway, it was one of the Blue Bloods. Okay. Well, against a team like Boise State, you got no problem dropping 8 guys down into the box because I guarantee you're not worried about leaving your corners on an island against their receivers,
I don't
right?
even know who the quarterback is anymore.
No. So what are you
Couldn't
going to
tell
do? You're going to load the box. What did Genty go for? Like 140 yards still?
He did well. It was let's see, Penn State,
yeah.
and their
So,
defense was insane.
especially up front, right? And then he still runs for 140 yards against him. Like you never see that happen, right? Like just they all like you're like, hey, if we're gonna win this game, it's got to be through somebody other than him because they're not letting him do his thing.
Yeah.
And that dude, that was an eye opener to me. I was like, okay, this guy is legit.
My only concern would be he's had like 1 trillion carries already in college, but
Yeah, but he hasn't had really any injuries
No,
either.
true.
And he's built like a fire hydrant.
yeah, I think he's gonna be awesome. I'm happy for him because he went to the perfect place for him.
Well, and you know, I also
And for
heard
Pete.
too, got to really respect that. I guess he was getting offered millions in NIL to transfer to an SEC
I
school.
love that. Yeah, I love that.
And he said, no, these guys bet on me. I'm sticking with my crew. And he turned down millions of dollars. That's people are like, why is that important? Like football is, especially at that level, it's too hard of a game. If you don't love the game, college was like that too. Honestly, I burned out in college. When you're playing,
I'm glad you brought this up. People don't understand the life these kids have.
oh,
It's you're at the facility
yes,
10 hours a day every day.
Yep.
And they're making sure you eat right. They're making sure you're conditioning right. You're getting treatment. Like you're probably studying in the building, these guys aren't having a good time.
You're traveling all weekend. No,
Yeah.
it's fun because you love the game.
Yep.
But it burned me out. And I didn't
Yeah.
think I could ever get burned out on football. And I walked away after 3 years and I was like, I'm just done. I'm spent. And then the other part of it is on top of all that, it's also the physical part, right? You're getting the hell kicked out of you constantly. You got to be in the weight room all the time. At least I did because I was undersized. Every time you sit down to eat a meal, it's like an Olympic event. Because I was 5'9" linebacker, so I'd keep
Eat a jar of peanut butter a day.
Oh my God. It's exhausting. And we were adding it up on weeks where we traveled, not including sleeping. We spent 70 hours that week doing football related activities. 70 hours. And it burns you out. And for those, and I think that's why it's so big when you're like, they're talking about, a football player versus a guy that likes money. Why? Because it's hard just being a normal person. If you got 20 million in the bank, remember Albert Hainsworth?
Oh yeah.
Remember that? Yeah. Okay. He was a beast. He was
till he got paid.
Then he got paid and did nothing. Literally his career stopped the minute he got that check. And everybody, rips those guys, which they should. They should rip them. Like as a man, you cannot accept a paycheck. Like, yeah, it's maybe not fun anymore. It's a job.
Yeah, you better try to earn some of that 100 million. Yeah,
you got to go to work. At the same time, I understand it.
I mean, that's human. It's just human nature.
Yeah,
I'm always surprised that more guys don't just fold.
I am too.
After that,
that's
why I always like a lot of people hated on Tom Brady, didn't like him. I'm like, man, I don't know. Like he's married to a supermodel. He's got hundreds of millions of dollars. He already has a bunch of Super Bowls, and he's still working harder than everybody and competing harder than everybody. Like, how do you not like this guy?
He's grinding like an undrafted.
Right. It's just like Jordan. I mean,
Jordan's
got 4 or 5 rings, and he's still working way harder than you.
Well, look, and I'll just, I'll even point it out in my own life. I worked way harder when I had 30 million under management.
Right.
Like, no, I
no
worked,
choice.
Yeah, I worked just as hard in terms of watching markets and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of the grind, hourly, that's not even close. I could.
Right.
Why?
I'm the bottom of Maslow's pyramid's good now.
Yeah, but and then you look at those cats, and I don't have 100 million in the bank, not even close. But you look, and like you said, that's another thing that I don't think gets pointed out enough. Everybody points out the kid that screws up, I think it's amazing that as many of these kids come out of the positions they come out of, get paid what they get paid, get treated the way they get treated, and end up being. I'm amazed the success rate is as high as it is. And it actually goes to something, and I can't believe I'm saying this. What it tells you that I think a lot of NFL coaches and college coaches are doing pretty good jobs teaching these guys how to be men.
And a lot of, I think it's big too. Like a lot of these kids they're just better humans than they were 30 years ago to me.
Agreed.
I mean, you just watch them in an interview and it's like, wow. And then you
Yeah.
can tell they're putting in the work and stuff. A lot of them are just way more like well spoken now than they used to be. Their values seem to be like way better. I don't know. I've been really impressed every time I see some of these kids doing interviews and stuff, and just the obvious work they put in. And
oh man, and
that's all like across college athletics. Period. Like
there was another kid too. I'm forgetting who he was, but he came from one of these small schools, and I think he got drafted last night, or they're saying he's going to get drafted tonight. Good player, and say it was like Incarnate Word or no, that was Cam.
That was Cam. Yeah,
that was Cam Ward. Anyway, it was a small school somewhere, kind of like that. Same type deal as Genty. He was getting offered a bunch of NIL stuff, and he said, "quote unquote," turned it all down, stayed there, and he's like, "Nobody wanted me when I was coming out of high school except these guys, and there's no way I'm bailing on them now." And you hear that, and you're like, and again, that's not only is that he was probably, I don't know what the NIL numbers, but if he was getting thrown around by those schools, it had to be $500,000 to $1 million. Right. So I mean, that's just,
which is life changing for most people. So
that's incredible. You tip the cap to those kids. What else before we get moved on here?
Yeah.
One trade, New York picked up Jackson Dart, but they weren't the ones that drafted him.
No, they traded up to get him.
Oh, they traded up for it.
Yep. So they took Carter, and then we got pretty late there in the first, and they traded up. I think it was 25 or whatever. Can't remember.
Did anybody's board have him going before Shedeur or Sanders?
So my understanding is that there are multiple teams that had Dart above Sanders, multiple teams that have Shuck above Sanders.
Really?
And there's probably some people that had him clear cut one or two. So like everybody's different. Everyone has different needs and stuff. So, but what was weird is like, I don't know, if you're the Giants, did you really have to trade up to get him? Like, probably not, but who knows? They're happy.
You're also talking about the team that traded Saquon Barkley to the Philadelphia Eagles too.
Yeah, their GM is definitely in a get it done or get fired, and their coach year. Like they are a lot better this year. They're done.
Yeah, I that the Saquon deal is still a head scratcher to me.
And you can watch all that unfold on the Hard Knocks from the offseason because they were doing the Giants.
Oh, that's right.
So you can see all the sauces being made on those decisions.
Yeah.
And the owner was like, the owner dropped 45 cents. Like, I want to keep Saquon. And the GM was like, nah, it's bad value. And then you watch him do what he did, and it's like, that was bad value, but you should have done it.
Well, here's the flip side, though, too. He wasn't – the Giants ain't – that's not the same offensive line either.
Yeah.
I mean –
and the Eagles had a great defense. Eagles can throw the ball over your head the way the Giants can't. So
yeah,
they made him look a lot better.
Yeah, I felt like Saquon was a scale tipper for the Eagles. He wasn't tipping anything in New York.
And to be fair to the Giants too, like he'd been banged up a lot lately.
Yeah,
like there was some concern there. I mean, and running back it's a weird position. Like it's easier to replace guys at that position for cheap than any other position. So paying that position a boatload of money feels terrible. So like I get it, but it just goes back to the all pro thing. Like, I don't know, if you have a generational running back, maybe just pay him.
Yeah.
And you had one.
That everybody knows that guy looks like a monster in street clothes. I had got sideline passes for the Seahawks Giants game, and I was down there on the Giants side watching them warm up. Seeing that dude in pads in person, just a few feet away, he looks like an X-Man.
Yeah.
Like a comic book character. Like he doesn't get put in this route, but like he and DK Metcalf would be in the same like picture. I mean, you should see his quads.
I know. So Baker Mayfield, I would just call him Saquads.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, dude. I mean, you're sitting there sitting there going, you just put a piece of wood between his legs and start a fire. You're sitting there with friction. I mean, but he's just ripped.
So speaking of last night, a kid got drafted by the Chargers. The running back for North Carolina, Omari and Hampton, and he's a beast. He looks like
his name.
A G.I. Joe playing football. He's a monster.
Oh,
in that run first Chargers offense with that coach, he's gonna
Harbaugh.
Yeah, that guy's gonna be big time. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he has more yards than Genty next year.
No, and Harbaugh's gonna just shove him up your throat too.
That ain't gonna be any fun for anybody. I was hoping he would drop to the second round for Cleveland, but Yeah.
I tell you, my personal trainer played for Harbaugh at USD and at the Niners, and there's another guy that's really misunderstood.
I agree. After listening to Alex Smith talk about him, I was like, all right, this guy, I kind of like him now.
My buddy got cut from the Niners, but he played from a USD. He's still got his number, and he's talked to him every once in a while, but he goes, I guarantee you right now, if I text him, I will get a text or a call back inside of 24 hours every time.
Yep. He knew every player's birthday and talk to them, like, give him a handwritten card. Like, he's just that kind of dude.
Yeah. He told a funny story. He brought in somebody. It was some kind of celebrity. It wasn't a Pete Carroll like Snoop Dogg guy, but I can't remember who it was. It's like giving him some kind of motivational speech. And Harbaugh's like all fired up about it. So he invites the guy up there and he's like, gives him the podium, but he only moves like a foot and a half away. And Harbaugh's just like hanging out next to him the whole time, like hanging over his shoulder, just like staring at him. And he's like this far away from him. And every single thing he says, he's like, Harbaugh's face is like, lighten up. And I was like, so the intensity thing's not an act. He's like, oh, dude, like
you see that when he played. I mean,
yeah, it is Captain Comeback. Remember?
I remember watching him with the Chargers when I was a kid. So,
do you remember the run he made with the Colts, Indianapolis?
Yeah.
And they ended up running into Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And got beat. That was the Pittsburgh teams with like Greg Lloyd on it, and
I don't even want to think about those.
Kevin
guys.
Green. Yeah,
those. I don't want to think about it.
Yeah, but they weren't that great because remember they that was back when Tommy Maddox.
They were compared to us.
Oh yeah. That's kind of Steelers are like. The Steelers to you guys are like what the Bears are to the Packers, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, total hatred. And since the 60s, they've owned us. So
it's been that bad.
Oh, yeah.
When was the last time you guys beat them?
Well, I mean, we did beat them in the playoffs, whatever that was, 4 years ago with Baker. So that was nice. Ben Roethlisberger cried on the sideline, which is one of the best moments of my sports life.
Oh, you guys have to hate him.
Yeah, I always respected that dude, though. He's one of those guys you compete against. You're just like, yeah, he's good.
He's tough, but he's also going to tell you about every injury he has.
Yeah,
he's going to make sure you know.
I hated playing that dude, so I'm glad he's gone.
So we probably should pivot to finance.
Now that we're like an hour in, yep.
Yeah. Okay. Before we get into this stuff, give us a little rundown on where we're at. Where did we finish up on today?
Yep. So S&P closed up 0.74. NASDAQ was up 1.12. So this is where it gets interesting. You had Mag 7 up 3%, while you had equal weight down 0.16. So this was truly the Mag 7 dragging the rest of the market's carcass across the finish line today. Small caps were flat, so did nothing. Oil's up about 0.7, gold, silver, all the metals down. Bitcoin up about 1.4. So that Bitcoin to gold ratio continues to slide higher. Dollar up about 0.3. The 2-year was down 3 basis points. The 10-year down another 6. So the bond rally continues, and that's, I think, one of the reasons the equities are doing great is the bond market finally calmed down and chilled out. So I think part of this is a relief rally on that. So very, very solid week for equities, and all of them have basically closed the week at right around that 50% retrace level, right around their downtrend lines.
I know we were hoping
just enough to suspend you through the weekend and be like, I don't know.
We were saying it yesterday, and I remember sitting there thinking it's the one thing we're not going to get.
Yep.
I was looking for confirmation one way or the other. We finished right on the line.
Yep.
Right. Of course. Right. It is fantastical though. And don't, you and I, again, we were speaking about this off the air, and don't, nobody conflate because I don't think that we're up against anything close to this. But in terms of watching markets, I think one of the things that's so interesting right now is it just doesn't happen very often where you watch markets operate in a way where it appears as if they are purposefully ignoring any and all news. Meaning the only time I can really comp it, and again, it's not a perfect comp, but is like mid-January of 2020 going into COVID, where you're like, in the time, when you and I started putting our bearish positions on, we had no idea that we were going to have countrywide shutdowns. You're just sitting there going, okay, you got a market that's rocking and rolling, and none of this is constructive. This makes no sense. There's a kind of an eerily similar feeling right now where you're like, you guys are all like, guys, 50 to 65% tariffs on the second largest economy in the world is not a good resolution. Higher equity prices, that does not justify, especially coming from these levels.
Right.
You know, like if you had Meg 7 down 50% year to date, like I know that's, but if it was that ugly, and in this kind of situation, you saw a bid coming into those things, I get it. That would make some sense. A, you're value buying, right? You're picking up bargains. But B, you know, like them, hate them, love them, whatever. They're gonna be naturally less vulnerable to just because their spread is so large, right? That makes some sense. But at these levels, I mean, you're buying these things not that far off all-time highs, and really extended multiples on all of them. It's kind of bizarre to watch.
I wouldn't say all of them. I still think it's
true.
It's the tale of two Mag 7s. That it's sort of a Mag 3 and a Mag 4 to me, but
that's fair because if
you blend them, it looks ugly. But
like Google looks like what you'd expect the rest of the Mag 7s to look like.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the 4 are all trading under 25 times forward earnings.
Yeah.
Some of them, I think Google's like 18, 19, and then the others are like 22, 23.
Google's forward earnings are lower than that. I think they're like 13 because their trailing 12-month PE ratio is 18 now.
So, but then, you know, Apple, Microsoft, Tesla are those are still up in the clouds for some reason.
Yeah. And NVIDIA's, yeah.
I think NVIDIA was teasing 20 times forward earnings before it turned around.
Yeah.
So probably 25 now or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Those are not too extended.
Maybe 26 because it's running a little bit here, but.
And then you've got, you know, Tesla rallying 10% on a day, like, and that's like.
Let's see where that closed.
Well, I mean, there's just that's just Tesla for you, right? But again, even that one's crazy because in the face of another just brutally bad quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Not just a bad quarter, but like the forward looking commentary and everything for them is terrible.
Well, and what the flip side is this? What do we also know about Tesla? We also know that if you're looking for management, and this is not a political statement at all, and I'll repeat it again. I happen to be a big fan of what Musk was doing at Doge. Could he have done it differently? Sure. But I actually thought it was a very admirable attempt on his part. And if all he ends up doing is cutting 150 billion, that's way short of where we wanted, but it's a hell of a lot more than any other elected bureaucrat's done anytime soon. So all that being said, I'm not rooting against the guy, but Tesla's management undoubtedly, unlike a lot of other managements out there, they're not going to give you the conservative, sober outlook, right? They're going to MicroStrategy.
Never have, never will. Yeah.
No, they're going to MicroStrategy. I mean, it's amazing how the shareholders base continues to buy it.
It's funny you said like one of the most important things to do. Like if we have any young people out there that want to get into investing, one of the important things to do is to read through the quarterly transcripts and to go back in time and look at the last 10, 20 of those and see, well, how did they deliver on what they said they were going to do? That's how you figure out who's a good management team and who's not. And if they own the mistakes and tell you how it went wrong. The problem with Tesla is if you go back and if you looked at the last 20 quarters and like, how did they deliver on what they said? The track record is abysmal.
Yeah.
And like that tells you a lot. And it's weird because a lot of companies that went find its way back in the price when people are like, okay, well, they said that before and it wasn't true. So we don't believe you. For whatever reason, every time they say something, people are like, oh, wow, that's amazing. I'm going to buy this.
I know. Well, and here's the crazy part about it. As a guy that was as bearish and anti-Tesla as anybody out there, because I was a big anti-Tesla. I thought for sure Musk was a fraudster, out and out fraud. I don't think that's the case now, but I do think that he is. I think he presses the edges big time on what he should can't, what he can and can't say.
I mean, he says stuff he knows not true.
Well, this is where I have this.
We've been an inch from full self-driving for 7 years. Like, come on.
Yeah. So, but kind of gets into this gray area of, is it a lie if it really is your intention? You know what I mean? Like, to be fair to him, meaning like he wouldn't be the first.
I'll let you be fair to him.
Well, he wouldn't be my point is he wouldn't be the first entrepreneur. And I mean this, I bashed the guy as hard as anybody, but he wouldn't be the first entrepreneur that was overly aggressive about his timelines, right? Well, the point I was going to make was I actually think what they've accomplished when you think of a new car brand starting in the mid 2000s in America, American made, and within 13 years has the number one selling car in the world. That's mind blowing.
Number one.
Was it in the United States?
Yeah,
Model 3.
Yeah.
Maybe Model 3.
Competing with the Corolla globally is kind of impossible.
Yeah. Okay. So I think in the Model 3, it was the most,
yeah, I mean,
number one
sold
selling
a lot
car.
of them in America. Yeah.
Okay. In America. Okay. That is unbelievable. Had you told me that, what do you think the chances are that a new car company can come out and within 13 years have the number one selling sedan in America? I'd have been zero. Right.
Yeah.
To go, like, in my opinion, to go screw that up and overshadow that with all of these kind of ridiculous you know what I mean? They're like a victim, not of necessarily their execution, but of their overshooting of what their capabilities are.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I think that's how he got the capabilities he has, though, is by aiming so high and trying so hard to get there that you end up in a good place. I mean,
but now you're left with a company that everybody's route. I mean, the stock is still behaving as if they're an automobile manufacturer that's 2 weeks away from self-driving cars, and they've got endless
selling
demand.
1 billion robots, and
they've got endless demand, and every single one of those things like has gone up in smoke.
Right.
It
trades like an aggressive growth equity, and it's not growing.
It's shrinking.
Right. It's just like the Apple we've talked about before.
Yeah.
But worse, because it's even more expensive and growing even slower. So.
Well, yeah, and it's not in an industry where it can expect to generate 20% margins.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're not sustainable. Yeah. And I remember laughing about that out of the gate because all the Tesla bulls back in the heyday were all like, "Yeah, what other manufacturers got 28% margins?" And I remember looking at them going, "Hey guys, if you think automobile margins are sustainable at 28%, I have a bridge to sell you."
There'd be so many startup automobile manufacturers the next day.
That's better margins than Apple has.
Yeah.
Right? No, all that was that Tesla was cool and people were willing to overpay to have one. As soon as that demand wave got hit,
price cuts.
Yeah. And what happened? That's what happened.
Yeah.
Now, what are they running at? Last quarter, their gross margin, net margins are down to 7, 6.5, 7.
I don't remember. I remember last time I looked, it had come
mid
down to
single
16,
digits.
So yep.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah.
It's not good at all. What else did we notice today? Anything catch your eye?
I think it's from yesterday, but we did mention the Kansas City Fed data came out, and in the current data was decent, other than employment. But most of these regional surveys, they'll also have like a what do you think it'll be in 6 months question, and man, that stuff is bad. Like, and you're seeing that across all the manufacturing indices, like where you get that. What do you think it's going to look like in 6 months question, and like basically catastrophic. And then same thing for the beige book, which is kind of the anecdotal, ask people all over the country how each regional Fed poll all the business people in your region and everything, see how they think. And that was pretty bad, and with extreme focus on tariffs. So the soft data continues to look bad. And then the other thing that's starting to catch on already, so you're kind of in the first inning of seeing the real impacts, and that is I've brought this up recently, like starting to pay attention to freight data becomes real important. And you're seeing it with how many ships are coming from China, how much volume is on the ships coming from China, even the trucking and rail data in the US starting to roll over. So all of that like supply chain logistics stuff is already starting to feel the pinch. Obviously we have some inventory buildup that lets us buy time. But when you get through that's when like prices start to move and store shelves start to look different. And that's not that far away. And I think I heard like the Target, Walmart folks, whenever they had the meeting at the White House, they were like, we'll start seeing some of these impacts in 2 weeks. And that meeting was a few days ago. So that is top of mind for me right now. Another thing where I wish it was an ETF, and that I wish it was an ETF to short the trucking industry. It's going to get, torn apart. Unless this stuff really goes away really fast, trucking is going to be bad, and you're going to speaking of watching in non-farm payrolls, maybe not this coming week, but from the one after that, is to look at truck driving jobs and stuff like that. It's going to be crucial to watch.
Yeah, I don't know if I was just thinking while you're talking, like I was trying to figure out what the market narrative is here. And I don't really think that there is much of one, but if you look at the price action, and if you looked at the price action alone, including valuations and, just looked at the whole picture, just looking at that, I would say this market thinks that this whole thing is going away in a relatively short period of time.
And this is despite the earnings estimates continuing to erode and look recessionary.
And this whole thing is not going away.
Right.
It's not. Like,
right.
Is it going to get scaled back? Sure. But
speaking of it not going away, something that this is small, but something I noticed today, and this also involves speculation on my part, was the president talking about, like, the market's doing well in the last couple of weeks. So he said, like, the market's starting to understand, what I'm doing here. So now I'm worried that, you go from having to pull back because the markets are freaking out, and then the markets come right back and you're like, oh, the markets are fine with what I was going to do. Like, no, they're fine with you changing your mind. So I'm a little concerned that maybe next week starts to take a harder line on some of this stuff, and then the market has to, at some point, reorient to, oh, wait, maybe this isn't all going away.
Well, one of the things I was writing here is I was reminded while you were talking, I think it'd be best if Trump understood this, but I think along with Trump, I think it'd be best for a lot of market participants to understand this. That, guys, there is a difference, not all the time, but honestly, frequently. There is a difference between what is good for asset prices over the next 6 to 12 months and what is good for our country long term. And it is not infrequent that those things conflict.
100%.
Okay. I think now we can get into talking about how it's done and whether we agree or whatever. I believe that having some tariffs or a new trade deal with China is a must. That has to get done. Okay. But regardless of how that gets done, the benefits from doing that are not going to be immediately great, right? It's like nobody tells you to take this medicine because it's going to make your stomach feel really good, right? You take the medicine because in a few days you're going to get over the sickness, right? It doesn't taste good, but it's taking the pain up front for less pain down the road. I think this is one of those classic cases where, and I want people to, to understand what I'm saying, which is, look, I think this confrontation needs to happen. Do I think it could happen different ways? Sure. But it needs to happen. I think it's good for our country. I don't think that any way you have this concentration is a benefit for equities in the next, potentially next 12, even 24 months. But sometimes, or a lot of times, doing the right thing for the long run. I mean, look, if this was just all about equity prices, keep the printer press running, indefinitely, right? Just keep it on. So, like, we've got to delineate here. And what I would say to Trump is, no, you're misunderstanding this. The markets are doing what they're doing. The markets are the only reason the markets would be doing this, and the only reason this is real, what's happening, is if they think you're going to completely fold and back off. He's like, well, I'm not going to do that. And go, okay, well, the markets are not agreeing with you then, right? The only reason they'd be rallying, they're not rallying because you're holding China to the, I mean, and it's a ridiculous thought on like, what's one of the things that's driven this rally, right? Record stock profits, right?
Yeah.
Where did the majority of that come from? It came from shipping the costs overseas and selling them back here, right?
Yeah, that's where the margins came from. That's for sure.
That's where the stock prices came from. So if our plan undoes that, how is that beneficial for those stocks? It's not.
Right.
It's just not. And well, yeah, they can do it. Yeah, they'll live to play another day, but they got to move supply chains, which isn't easy, which isn't costly. They got to build new facilities in different places. It's going to be CapEx. Wherever they do the CapEx, they're most likely looking at higher labor costs. Right?
And CapEx intentions are falling off a cliff, which is a very bad sign for where we're heading in the next 6 months. So
uncertainty.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't blame anybody.
No, it's an environment that existed a lot after the GFC. And it was one of the things we were critiquing the Fed about, which is, hey guys, when you're in what is considered kind of a dicey economic environment, you can actually hurt yourself from helping out too much on the monetary side, because it's far less risky and far more guaranteed benefit comes from playing the financial game, right? Front running the Fed on buying treasuries, stuff like that, than it does to turn around and make actual real investments in the economy, right? And you kind of have a similar dynamic going on right now for completely different reasons, meaning why is CapEx drying up? Nobody's shipping billions of dollars around the world unless they know where it needs to go. And like my point was, no matter how you did this, it was going to engender some of this uncertainty, even if you did it perfectly, which is why I think the market is really off base right here, because right now there is no good news out there as far as short-term equity prices are concerned.
Yeah, we have less bad news than we thought we had 2-3 weeks ago. That's the only good news you have.
Right.
And we're just so disoriented that we can't realize that it's still actually pretty bad.
Right. Another one to talk about, and we've talked about this a lot, miners. That is an extraordinarily frustrating trade, despite the fact that they're up. People are like, what do you mean? They're up so much year to date. Like, well, if that's your opinion, yes, they are. But, I remember when energy companies coming out of COVID were up 50% year to date, and we're still 85% off their 12-month high. So miners aren't that bad, but on a fundamental basis, once again, they've gotten cheaper, right? As the price has gone up. And one of the things that's encouraging to me about that, again, I will say that what you're seeing happen in gold prices and in miners, we had pretty good timing on that. I believe the day we said wait for a pullback, I think gold was 3,500 that day. But we didn't know it was going to happen that soon. But this is exactly what we're talking about, right? I think you've already had about an 8 to 10% pullback in miners. You've already got what is that, about a 4 or 5% pullback in gold.
Yep.
This is why we said be patient. But what I will say is, if you've been looking at those and thinking about those trades, still be patient. But this, in my opinion, this thing isn't even close to over. I think you're second inning-ish on that story. The fundamentals are just overwhelming, but it does look, I wouldn't be surprised to see a little extended weakness here in gold and then consequently the miners. And my suggestion to people is, if you don't have any positions, kind of start scaling in, biting off a little bit here or there. The nice thing about buying stuff, and I think this is one of the things that people overlook. The nice thing about taking a shot on miners here, or any asset that's at undervalued, is to get a big pop in the portfolio. You don't have to back up the truck.
Yeah. They move.
If it does what it's supposed to do, and if cash flows matter, the thing's going to go up a lot. So, and what's one of the reasons I've always liked good undervalued miners is, with a 5% position in the portfolio, I can get it to act like it's like a 20% gold position, right? If you pick the right ones.
Yep.
So if I were people, and if you don't have positions in miners or gold, again, anytime you're buying into these, it's, in my opinion, it shouldn't ever be a one purchase type deal. I think you should build a position over time because of that embedded volatility, which is always going to be there. And to that fact, it's probably true for every commodity producer, isn't it? I'm trying to think if there's an exception to that. There's just inherent volatility in commodities.
Yeah, everyone I can think of is just pretty volatile.
Yeah, and you've played. You've played. Have you ever played pork bellies?
I've played everything. I mean, I was on the market huddle this morning talking about soybean oil. So
I was just going to bring up soybeans. Yeah. Have you ever made any big money on those? On some of those weird
cocoa? I'm trying to think. Not really on the proteins. Like, honestly, the best place to be in ags for the last year or two was proteins, cattle, and pork, and all this stuff's done great. But I usually it's been so good lately that I just I don't like buying things when they're already on fire, and that stuff's been doing so well for a while. So miss those. But
why have those things been doing so well?
There's just supply and demand. There's just supply's low.
What hit the supply, I wonder?
It's a combination of things. Some of it's weather driven. Not enough food for the animals. It's a bad business, so a lot of people just gotten out of the business. So like the supply is just low. More competition from places in South America for cattle. China buying more from people in South America than us. Dollar strength has been a giant headwind for all agriculture, including protein. So like it's had a lot thrown at it.
I hadn't really thought about that.
And there's been some times where like the price they were fetching was low, while their feed and fertilizer and everything, like input costs exploded, crushed their margins. Like, so you've gotten expensive for things like cattle, and these ranchers still aren't making a killing despite that. So yeah,
Sounds like gold miners.
yeah.
Well, no, they are. And for another good one, and it's on the spendy side, but just to give gold miners a break after knocking on them, everybody should go read that quarter that just came out from one of our top holdings, which is AEM, Agnico Eagle. They have got excellent management, excellent operations. It exists in that industry. It just, it's a strange industry, man. It's like the land that time forgot. Like, you go back in there and you see, and to be fair, I haven't been on a mining site in a really a good bit of time, but they just allocate money like you'd expect, like a vacuum or automobile manufacturing company would have allocated money in like the 50s. Like we're going to get country club memberships for the executives, right. All this stuff. And you're looking around going, guys, I just see a bunch of capital like sitting around. I remember there was this, we were involved with a mine that a larger company, Kinross Gold, was actually looking at doing a JV, so a joint venture. So they came up to the mine. Now, just to do some drilling and joint venture work, naturally, they had to buy a new fleet of color-coordinated trucks. Then they had to send those trucks to the paint and body shop to get their logos put on them. And you're just watching all this. You're just like, why didn't you guys rent some trucks? You know what I mean? Like and the dry shacks that they built. Yeah, it's just crazy. You just see them burning money.
People, they take care of costs. That's how, honestly, who succeeds in business
100%
at the end of the day.
Especially those businesses.
Right.
The costs make or break you.
And then you think about like back in the day, like Standard Oil, when he would go down to the level of, like, there's the famous story, like he goes up to the guy that's like closing up the oil barrels and asks how many screws they're using to hold the thing to close it, and the guy's like, oh yeah, like 35, and he's like, well, have you tried 30? And the guy's like, no. He's like, well, so let's try it. Didn't work, leaked. So they try 31, and they just keep going until they get to the right number and end up saving 2 or 3 bolts or whatever.
Yeah.
And but then he like did the math on how much that would save the company over like a decade. This was like millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So he's like, yeah, that's the level of cost control you need.
Yeah.
And that's why he was the richest man in the world. So
yeah.
I mean,
now this story has always cracked me up. Anecdotally, sometimes that approach can backfire. Okay, funny story. So you probably know this one. Years ago, Campbell's Soup had some kind of competition, and I think they threw it out there to the public, and they're like, a new can design, right? And I think everybody, if I could be botching the story, but the main part of it will be accurate. If I remember correctly, I want to say it was like an art design or like logo design, all that kind of stuff. Well, some kid, younger guy, I can't remember how old he was, actually did a can redesign. And he shaped the can like a tuna can, shorter and wider. And what he found out was, by making it that shape, you could have the exact same contents, but it saved like 25% of the tin to make the can just by shaping it that way. And then, so he submitted to Campbell's, and that saved them millions of dollars a year, just instantly. So they started making the soup in the cans. Nobody'd buy it.
Right. It's just too weird. And
it was too weird.
Yeah.
Nobody would buy it. And so they had to scrap it.
It reminds me of the doorman fallacy from Roy Sutherland. He talks about, he does a lot of good stuff about like, where if you do efficiency for efficiency's sake, sometimes you mess up.
Yeah.
One of them's like, where nice like apartment buildings in the city would get rid of their doorman because it's woefully inefficient. You can just replace that with nice elevators, or whatever. But what that doesn't take into account is like, that guy gives status. He has some safety, roles mixed in. Like, he makes people feel special. Like, there's all these little things that you can't account for in his salary. And next thing you know, like, your building isn't what it used to be.
Rents are dropping
for no other reason than you let go of the doorman. So it's like,
yep,
more efficient isn't always the answer.
Yeah. No, it's not. But they usually, And in a commodity producing business, now
in a very widgety thing, do it. Right?
yes, yeah. Well, because if you're Campbell Soup, you don't have a commodity.
Right. You have a thing in front of people on a shelf, and they have to like it.
Right. But if you came up with a way to sell Campbell's Soup the tin for 20% less, they'd have bought it from you all day long. They don't care what it looked like, right?
And for all you know, they could have thickened the can up and made it look cool, and it cost them money, but they could have charged twice as much and people would have bought it.
Right.
Sometimes stuff's that dumb too on the other way, where you overcharge for something that's slightly better and it totally works.
Yeah. No, we've seen a ton of those. Let's see. The other thing too, you were on another show today, Market Huddle. Those are some friends of ours.
Indeed.
Kevin's going to be on our show, I believe, next.
Well, he's on jury duty,
He's on
so
jury
I don't know.
Yeah, so no. He sent me the email. What is it? It's in May. We had to back him up.
Yep.
But anyway, he's going to be on with us, and we've got one of two other people going to be on with us next week. But yeah, Chase was on the Market Huddle. If you guys haven't listened to that, great show. Another fun podcast to listen to. A little bit different than ours.
Yeah.
They're more
especially with Patrick, because me and Patrick are chart nerds, so we bat around a lot of technicals.
Yeah. You guys go harder to that, and then but some great. It's great information, but also hilarious. Yeah. These guys they have a good time. Usually there's some beer drinking.
Yeah, I did not partake in that because it was 8 a.m. West Coast time, but he's out in Portugal right now, so it was prime have a beer time for Patrick. And
well, he's a Canadian.
The producer, the guy who's producing the show, is on the beach. Like literally, he's about to close his laptop and go like walk back out to the beach after the show. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're Canadian too. Like, I mean, the Canadians are so funny to me. It's probably just my perception, but I feel like whenever I've been around Canadians, like mining, they're always usually big mining conferences, things like that. A bunch of good buddies, and no matter how late they'd stay up, no matter how hard they'd drink, I would leave them at the bar at 11:30. Guy, I got to go to bed. Like I'm done. Find out they're out till 3:30, 4 in the morning. They show up at the first thing, 8:30, bright-eyed, and you're looking at them going, how are you guys doing this?
Brits and Germans are very much like that too.
Good.
And Aussies.
Aussies too. Yeah, those are they'll get you.
Thrown a few back with some Aussie pilots while I was in the Air Force.
It's not a good idea.
I could not believe how much they could drink and still be okay the next day.
Yeah, they'll swim. They'll take you out in the deep water.
Yep.
You got to know. You got to make sure you know what you're doing when you're going out with those guys. All right. I think that we're. You know what? I shouldn't say that because Monday you'll probably finish flat and we'll probably be exactly where we're at. But point is, I think we're at a really interesting point. Who knows? I feel like you're either going to get, my feeling is you either get rejected from the spot we're at right now, or you go back and test the high of the year.
Or at least close. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that 6,000 on the S&P, a little short of the highs, can come into play if we're going to break above here.
And if that's perplexing to you, it is to me too. But then my next comment would be, where have you been for the last 10 years?
Yep. As it turns out, the market structure stuff matters as much as narratives, and market structure stuff could take over for a month or two.
But I do think it is important to point out for people to remember, guys, we're not, one of the reasons that we feel the conviction level we feel, or that I feel about whatever the market's telling you right now, I don't think you pay any attention to it. Remember that day where the S&P was up 10%. Okay. That has never, ever, ever happened in a good environment. It would
be the first time that was real close to a nice bottom. That's true.
Yeah. So,
and like speaking of, like Patrick talked about today, like in 2008, you had that like 4-month consolidation after the initial drop before things got really bad. So like, it's not abnormal to have a nice rally and a nice even borderline retest, and it's just not crazy.
No, especially after an extended, chill, sanguine period of time, right? And this has been the longest, chillest, most prosperous, as far as markets go, period in history. And so, like we've said for years, when the end finally does come, it's probably not going to be quick, because you've just built up a lot of muscle memory, just buy the dip. And that continues to extend even when you're looking at them and going, guys, you realize you're buying earnings that they can't hold. They just can't hold. But we shall see. All right. Well, that does it for us for the week. We'll see you guys on Monday. And don't forget, you can catch us on video now on YouTube, TikTok. I almost said LinkedIn. I hate LinkedIn.
It's the worst. I have one of my guys from my school hit me up about hey, I'm going to tag you on this thing. Like, no,
I don't do LinkedIn.
Yeah, I don't do
I canceled mine. I hate LinkedIn. But yeah, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and of course, like I said, the new video on YouTube. So anyway, you guys have a great weekend. We'll see you again Monday. You're listening to Know Your Risk Radio the Know Your Risk podcast. Download and subscribe at knowyourriskradio.com.
Investment advice cannot be given without a client service agreement. Zach Abraham is an investment advisor representative of Trek Financial, an SEC registered investment advisor. Bulwark Capital Management is a marketing name only and does not carry a separate registration.